Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Wednesday night edition of Inside the Headset is sponsored by John Jones Real Estate. Nobody sells homes like John. Last week, I made a real bad mistake somehow or another. I had a conversation with this coach, but it did not transfer or whatever. But we bring live and on the air. He's in the National Hall of Fame. He sits at 5-0. He's got 505 wins. To his name. He's just a great guy, and I'm just pleased as heck to bring live and on the air the head coach of the Boyd Buchanan Buccaneers, head coach Gary Rankin. How you doing tonight, Coach?
I'm doing great, Stuart. Thank you.
Well, I do want to pick up where we talked last week before we get into our conversation. We were talking about the Oakland Patriots and Kevin Creasy and him, and we were talking about the possibility, of a game in the future of some time. And I'll let you just, I don't want to say it, Coach, but you're not scared, are you? It's just not the right time that needs to happen at the present time. But you are interested in the situation.
I'm probably scared, if you don't know the truth about it.
Are you?
No, there's such a high level above us, but I doubt if that ever game come up between us and boys, because we're limited in the number of kids we got. We only got 398 kids. Whoa. So it comes a numbers game, but I'd hate to line up and try to beat him and David Watson. That'd be almost impossible. That's an impossible task.
Yeah, and Coach Watson, of course, coached for you at Riverdale and everything. He always cherishes that. And, of course, you talked to him quite a bit. What'd you like about Coach Watson when he was on that Riverdale staff?
He was loyal, and he was young at that time, and we were just getting the program going at Riverdale. There was so much enthusiasm, and I felt like we had a great staff when I was there. Many of them have gone on to be head coaches and just had fantastic careers. So those were some special years with some special people, and it hadn't been done there was the biggest thing. I think when we came in there in 90 or 91, whatever it was, they had never been past the second round of the playoffs in the history of the school. And next thing you know, we're in the playoffs and we're in some state championships, and we did some things that hadn't been done there, and it was just a neat and exciting situation.
And, you came from Smith County, so you started over there. And at the time you were at Smith County, was it 2A or 3A, Coach?
It was 2A at that time.
Okay, so
it was 2A, and, it was probably a stroke of luck that I was able to leave from Smith County and land a job like Riverdale, because I remember when I went to interview, they told me there was 177 applications, and that's just unbelievable. But at that time, it was a job that a lot of people wanted. And somehow I snuck in there and got that job, and it sort of took off from there.
When you heard about it and everything, and you told your wife, you were going to apply for it and come to Murfreesboro, what ties at that time? That's in the early 90s. What ties did you have to Murfreesboro coming from Smith County? Did you know anybody?
Yeah, you sort of misquoted there. I didn't have a wife at that time, so
okay,
that made it a little bit that made it a little bit easier to jump up and go. But one of my best friends was the head coach in Sparta, White County, Jimmy Maynard, and he called me one night and said, "Man, you need to go get that Riverdale job. It's all kind of potential there." And I remember telling him, I said, "I can't get that job." But anyway, he sort of talked me into going and applying for it. And, something I did, I guess, impressed Mr. Watson. Of course, Mr. Watson was a football guy, and he knew what he was doing for sure. Still one of the best principals I've ever been around, or I think anybody's ever been around. But I would say I was pretty lucky getting that job.
So you get the job, and then of course, and you take off. I mean, did you carry any coaches with you when you came on at Riverdale?
Didn't carry a single one.
Wow.
Didn't carry a single one. Came to Riverdale, started over with the staff, and started from scratch with those guys, and had some good hires. I think Ron Crawford was there, and he stayed on. Ricky Field was there, and he stayed on. But that was just about it. After that, we started going out and hiring people. And Mr. Watson was kind enough to let me go out and do my thing and get who I wanted to get. And, it was a huge school at that time, so it was a lot of teaching positions coming open from year to year. So it was, it was easy to invite some people in there. Greg Wine, who's AD at Siegel High School, I was able to get him, and we just established a pretty good staff there.
So this is so you went from 2A and you're how big was Smith County? I mean, how many students, boys, did you have in the
We
school?
had about right around 400, 480, right at 500. But you went into Riverdale with a student population of 2,000.
Yeah.
So it still is, I guess. But at that time, it's just Riverdale and Oakland, so it's one of the biggest schools in the state. But football there had just been so-so, and the first year was tough. But after I think second year we were maybe undefeated, 10-0, and maybe got beat in the first or second round of playoffs. But it took off after that.
Wow, you were 10-0 in the second year after you jumped up. You won the state championship at Smith County, and then of course you won a couple at 1, 2, 3 at Riverdale, and then of course went to Alcoa and just racked up. But at that time, when did you feel like, Coach? I mean, you knew that. I mean, I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to be too bad at this. I'm going to be okay. I can really do this for a long time.
I think the second year, and I mean, one thing I'll take credit for, and I don't take credit for much that's happened, but I was pretty good with hiring coaches. I'm certainly not one of those guys that is afraid to hire somebody he thinks better than him or knows more than him or whatever. But I think one of my strong points was being able to get a good staff together and get good people. And, one guy can't do it by himself. One head coach can't do it by himself. And I was just real fortunate to be able to, like I say, develop a really, really good staff in the years I was there.
And you make such a great point, whether, you're not playing the game, but you got to have a great coaching staff to do it. And it's great advice for most CEOs that run companies or run schools or whatever.
No different. It's no different. And, every place I've went, I've just told them that's one thing I've got to do. You got to help me get coaches in, and then I'll take it from there. But I've got to be able to hire and fire, and I have fired a few. Hire and fire the guys that I need on around our program, and I always hired good people, good character people. Tried to hire good Christian people. Tried to hire people that I knew I would want my own children to be coached by and worked by. So I was really, really, really fortunate in that area.
Wow, Coach, I can't thank you enough for sharing that. Coach McDaniel was talking about how special some of those nights were when you all, the pride of painting the arrow and painting, getting the Riverdale sign and the logo, because it was a big thing back then after you cut the grass, wasn't it?
It was, and it was, there was a lot of pride in our program at that time, and Tommy and Ron Crawford and Greg Wine, David Watson, Steve Britton. We just had a phenomenal staff. And we worked good together. There wasn't any jealousies. There wasn't any, me-me's. We all worked good together. Everybody was proud of their unit that they were coaching and did a good job. And it was still, I mean, I've had some great years at some great places. But, of course, to do it there for the first time, the winning that first state championship in '94 was really, really special. There were just some great times there.
Well, and two, you had less, meaning in the technology phase. I mean, look at all the things and tools and toys you got now. I mean, all the video angles and everything. You had less.
Right.
You had less, but you still did more with less, didn't you, Coach?
Well, I mean, everybody else is about in the same boat, too, as far as that. The huddle and the sidelines and all that stuff they use today. And, I think I was one of the first coaches that really had a big coaching staff and coached on one side of the ball and did some of that stuff. But, it was pretty even as far as that was concerned. And, I went and studied a couple of – when I started at Riverdale, the big programs was Gallatin High School with Calvin Short. I went and I talked to them and studied their program. They were the ones that were succeeding at that time. Jefferson County with Craig Kisselbuth was one of those programs. So Lincoln County with Louis Thompson. I mean, Louis was one of the best coaches the state of Tennessee's ever had. And, I had no qualms about going and visiting those people when I were young and trying to find out, how everybody did things.
What was one of the things you learned from Louis Thompson? What was one of the things that you picked up from him?
He was just a tough guy. Louis was a tough old school. He played for Bear Bryant. He was honest. You knew when you traded films or when you had any kind of communication or talking with him, if he said they were going to wear one shoe on only one foot Friday night, that's the way it would be. You could always trust him, and just a good man and a great, great football coach.
He didn't – I mean, and, people don't know it, but, boy, you want to know a coach that really coached his kid to hits all the way through the whistle. I mean, all the way through the whistle. Lincoln County back then, ooh, some mean kids
Great,
down there.
great tradition down there. We had some of the biggest battles, I guess, that's ever happened in the state of Tennessee at Lincoln County, and the tradition and pride there at one time was just unbelievable. It was outstanding, outstanding.
Yeah, nobody knows it, but the old saying, it was Friday night at the pit, and when you went to Lincoln County and the temperature drops on the Tennessee Alabama line in the late fall, I mean the cold can just, I mean it cut right through you, Coach, cut right through you down there.
One of the best atmospheres that we ever played in when I was at Riverdale, for sure. It was just electric. It was electric.
Coach, you're sitting at 5-0 with Boyd Buchanan. You're only going to get to play 9 games this year, and you beat Chattanooga Christian 31-0, and you're not your next game until October 3rd, and you're going to catch Grace. What are you working on?
Next Friday. So we're off this week, and we've had a good week. We practiced Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Gave the kids off Thursday and Friday, so got a little break in there and getting ready. Our tough stretch is coming up. We've actually gone through probably the maybe the easiest part of our schedule, so we're fixing to get tested. We hadn't really been tested. So that's coming up, especially with a good team out of Knoxville. Knoxville Grace is a tremendous team, and Silverdale Academy over here in Chattanooga is a really, really good football team. So we still got some tough games coming up in the toughest part of our schedule.
Yeah, and people don't know it, but Grace is 4-0. So you're probably going to try to get out and see them before you play them.
They'll roll into our place next week undefeated, and it's going to be a huge, huge game with the winner probably having a step up to be region champs, and that's pretty big in our region this time because I think you would have the chance to play your playoff games at home. So, I mean, we've talked about it. Our kids know we could get into playoffs and play 3 games at our stadium, at Boyd Stadium, and play the 4th game 5 miles away. So you don't get it any better than that. So hopefully we can set our table like that through the rest of the year and make sure we get our playoff games at home and hopefully get to Chattanooga Stadium, which is only 5 miles from our school.
You healthy, Coach? Are you healthy?
Pardon?
Are you healthy, Coach?
We lost one. We lost one yesterday. He's a good player, but that's been the first one we've lost. He's probably out for 2 or 3 weeks with a little knee meniscus tear. He'll probably have to have worked on, but that hurt us. He was one of our best defensive players. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, that's common talk right now this time of year. You got to play without some. You got to make sure you got some ready, and we work hard at that. And hopefully, whoever's behind him will be able to step up and do what we need to get done.
Coach, we're going to be off for the next 2 weeks, but man, nobody appreciates you more than I do. You're a very special person, very special coach. I can't thank you enough for being on Inside the Headset tonight.
Oh, anytime. I appreciate what y'all do for high school. Anybody that works and tries to help high school football, I'm a fan of big time. I'm not only a coach, I'm a pretty big fan of high school football. I like to see other teams play. I try to get to watch some practice sometimes, but it's hard. But I just appreciate you and everybody in any kind of capacity that has to do with promoting high school football. So I really appreciate you, Stuart.
Well, and I filmed Laverne this past Friday night. They're sitting at 0-5. They don't have a win. They got to play Stewart's Creek Friday night. But it's tough playing in now with all these teams here in Rutherford County, and someone says it's watered down. I don't know if it's watered down, because if you come out of this, Coach, and you can go on in 6A football, I mean those 4 teams that squared out, they're going to be a lot to handle, aren't they?
I've seen those teams, and I think it's watered down to the point that they don't have as much depth maybe as we used to have. When I was at Riverdale and we had it going, Stuart, our second and some of our third teams could play for anybody probably.
Correct.
So, I've been fortunate to see Oakland play a time or two, saw Riverdale play a time or two in the last 3 or 4 years. And the biggest thing that I see is what the sideline looks like once they get their starting 11 out there. So I think that's the biggest thing. We just had so much depth when I was at Riverdale and Oakland was open. I'm sure that I think the starting 11 in a lot of those places are probably almost as good as they were back then for sure. But I think the numbers and the depth factor is probably a little bit different.
You couldn't said it better, Coach, because right now, I mean, I interviewed Will today yesterday, and I was talking to him, and I told him, I mean, you got to start working your quarterback in, because any of these teams that lose their quarterback, they're not ready. A lot of them are not ready.
you can get in a bad bind in one play. In one play. So well, that's one thing that I've done, and I know a lot of good programs do it too. But you better have somebody ready. You better have a backup quarterback. You better have a backup point guard, and you better have a backup pitcher. I mean, those are positions and stuff that maybe you can get by with something else, but the quarterback situation, it's so vital at all levels, not just high school level, but all levels.
Coach, I can't thank you enough for being on Inside the Headset. You have a great off season, and we'll talk to you real soon.
All right, thank you, buddy.
See you. Bye.